Hey there guys, Music Fan here. How you guys doing? Let's not waste any time. I want to do a track by track video of U2's fifth studio album, The Joshua Tree. I'm going to be commenting on every single track off this album from Streets all the way to Disappeared. So let's not waste any time. First track, Where the Streets Have No Name. I've heard many great album openers, all of them amazing, but for me personally, the one that's very closest to my heart is Where the Streets Have No Name. I could not think of an album or a song to open a more perfect album than Where the Streets Have No Name. I describe it to you, but I'll do it really quickly. It really starts off with like this very hushed organ from Brian Eno. Really fittingly, it really sounds like the ending synth, the ending synth sound of MLK from the previous album, the Unforgettable Fire. Almost kind of creates a continuation, as if MLK was leading into this very song. And then Edge's glorious, epic, gloriously guitar arpeggio appears as it slowly appears with that delay arpeggio that he picks as the song gets closer, and the song's intro then starts to continuously to build and build, and then comes in Larry with that drumming, and then comes in Adam with that really racing, thundering bass, and it's really all racing. It's getting more exhilarating and it keeps going on, and as it's rising to the apex, here's Bono coming in with I Wanna Run. My gosh, I cannot think of a more exhilarating, of a more phenomenal album opener, especially to really start out your day, than Where the Streets Have No Name. This is the perfect song, at least in my opinion. This is a perfect song. This track really personifies what U2 is about, really. Edge's gloriously epic guitar notes on here, the driving bass, the pounding drums, and Bono's open, full, passionate vocals. His voice cracks. He allows to kind of like uses his voice to exemplify the sense of passion in his voice, and he does it really well in this track. I cannot think of a better opener to an album than this, Where the Streets Have No Name, my favorite U2 song, and now a ecstatic, almost spiritual highlight in U2's live performances, and that's definitely a plus. So Where the Streets Have No Name, immaculate. Still haven't found what I'm looking for. This is one of U2's biggest hits and a main radio staple, not just in the United States, but all over the world. This track really displays a gospel influence of what U2 really took into as an influence on the recording of this album. Like especially this track, Still Haven't Found What I'm Looking For. It really lyrically speaks of looking in search for truth and in search of meaning. And even if you're not a Christian, then it's really a search for something more, a search for the ultimate potential of the human spirit. And really, this track really has this very, like, again, as a gospel quality to it. Like, you really truly feel it right over here as soon as Adam's bass really propels this song forward. As I've said in the review, this is also a huge highlight for Larry Mullen Jr. His drumming is impeccable on this track. It's really almost gives like a dance quality kind of to accompany this gospel character to this song. Bono, fantastic vocal performance here. His full open voice all to hear, and this track is simply amazing. Again, like other U2 hits, I don't care if this keeps getting overrated. This song for me will never ever get old. Another track that will never get old is With or Without You. This is U2 has made really great ballads before, but this is one of their most genuine, one of their most innovative, and like the previous track, is also a staple on the radio. Really, this is the first track that kind of almost sounds like it could be included in The Unforgettable Fire. It has that atmospheric experimental quality to it, and really it makes use of a prototype guitar effect called the infinite guitar, which really you hit a note and you use like a whammy bar, and it really creates a very infinite sustain in this particular guitar effect. And Edge really utilizes this technique to the fullest extent on this track. Almost creates a very haunting, if not very mournful quality. Like lyrically, you could take it in many ways, and I personally don't have any specific interpretation of this track, but this sounds like a very tortured love song, in the sense of like he's yearning to be with this person, but he can't stand the thought of being with this person, nor can he stand the fact of being without this particular person. Call it your lover, call it God, call it Christ, whatever interpretation you fit into. This song will meld into whatever interpretation you have. Larry Mullen Jr. on point. Adam Clayton's bass is a highlight on this track. One of their U2's best ever essential tracks. With or Without You. Love it, love it, love it, love it, love it. Bullet the Blue Sky. This is probably the most War-esque track on here. This track really returns to the harsh musical tone of the War album, except the only thing different with this is that this track instead takes more aim on the foreign policy of the foreign policies of then President Ronald Reagan. The song was inspired by the horrific scene of Bono witnessing a bombing on a Salvadorian village in El Salvador, which was completely bombed by American planes. And this really follows his rage, his anger at the distraught of witnessing such destruction, and him really kind of like taking a very subtle but still apparent shot at the foreign policy of the administration at that point, and really takes aim at the negative consequences of American foreign policy in the rest of the world, and how when not used properly can end up in very destructive ways. And this track is amongst U2's most fiercest. This is a fierce track. This is not a pop song. It's not a hey baby let's dance. No, this is a fierce guitar song. Bono telling Edge to put El Salvador through his amplifier, and has that raw edge when he makes a very raw guitar note, and he just kind of slides it down his guitar neck, almost creating this bomb falling from a fighter plane quality on this one. And it's one of U2's most energetic, their most raw sounding tracks. The lyrical imagery is simply haunting, like a man breathes into a saxophone. Through the walls we hear the city groan. Outside is America. Really just chilling lyrical imagery on this track. Every band member is very on point on this, especially this track. One of their most fiercest tracks ever on a U2 album. Following this, we have Running to Stand Still. Lyrically a sequel to Bad from The Unforgettable Fire, really displaying this couple really ruining their lives by surrendering to useless addictions like heroin. And this track, like the rest of this album, really displays like a sense of live performance, and this track is a prime example of that. Like, I mean, Bono, just pure vocal melodies, vocal harmonies coming out of him. I love this track also because, oh my gosh, Edge's acoustic pickings on this track, especially in the beginning here, I just, oh my gosh, I simply just adore. I love those opening guitar notes, acoustic guitar notes by the Edge. Really creates this very mournful feeling at the beginning of this track, and this, like the rest of the tracks here, is a pure quality track. Bono's harmonica solo at the end is really spot on as well. Red Hill Mining Town is a commentary on the English miners' strike around that particular time, and it's also like a track I feel is underrated because lyrically it's so evocative of, like, I keep getting this imagery of miners working in the mine, trying to work skin to bone to feed their families, and yet having a corrupt government not really giving them what they need. And this plight of not having anything to work or live for. And this track really is empathetic towards that. This is one of U2's most, not darkest, but one of their most evocative tracks, both musically, lyrically. Bono's vocal performances is top notch on this track. In God's Country, the seventh track on this album, like really a short but very awesome rock song. I really love this track. This also amplifies a very driving echo guitar note on From the Edge. Great guitar playing from The Edge. And really, whenever I hear this track, I keep thinking that I'm an immigrant traveling on a boat to the United States and seeing the Statue of Liberty for the very first time. That imagery keeps coming into my mind, and that's no different here than In God's Country, one of U2's most underrated, underappreciated tracks in their catalog. Trip Through Your Wires. This is a blues romper. This track is really pure American, but pure rock and roll kind of track. Really kind of reminds me of what the band are going to experiment with further with American music on the next album, Rattle and Hum. More on that album review later, but this track really is evocative of what they're going to do with that next album, how they'll delve deeper into the influences of American music. And really, this track, again, I sincerely love, like, the energy. It's contagious. Also, the music is very contagious as well, and really great vocal harmonies from The Edge and Bono. Has a really fantastic sense of intimate live performance on this track. Really top-notch song. I really love it. One Tree Hill. I really get a desert vibe from this track, really. And I get a vibe of heading into the sea. I get an open, wide space. I think this is the track that really best represents what the band was really going for as far as the desert, open landscape aesthetic, the theme of this particular album. And I think this track really follows that. This track is also a tribute to the late Greg Carroll, who was a assistant and roadie for the band up until his death in, I think, 85 or 86. And it really shook the whole U2 organization to its core and was really their first real great loss in the band's entourage. And I couldn't think of a beautiful track to really dedicate a person like him, Greg Carroll, to. And really, this track really ends on one of the most beautiful endings to a song, in my opinion, ever. Rest in peace, Greg Carroll. All of us U2 fans will always miss you and continue to miss you. Exit. This is probably one of U2's most darkest tracks ever on an album like this. This is a very mean, starky track, which is really dark and ominous. Like, again, this exemplifies a sense of live performance on this album, and this track really is one of them. And Adam Clayton has a very romping bass here, and Larry Mullins Jr. is on fire. He is straight pounding the drums away. Bono's vocal performance is really kind of evoking this ache, this existential pain from this person who is really trying to find meaning but is unable to. So he resorts to very horrific means to achieve that. And this is a raw track. This is one of their most musically and emotionally evocative songs ever. It really, lyrically, really reminds me of a track from Nebraska by Bruce Springsteen. It really reminds me of that, except it's more in a rock vein. So Exit is one of their most underappreciated tracks, at least in my opinion, ever. And the last track, Mothers of the Disappeared. Again, like Bullet the Blue Sky, this follows very horrific events that Bono witnessed in El Salvador. In this case, having to witness mothers who had their children taken away and brutally murdered by the brutal Pinochet regime around that particular time. This song expresses complete and emotional, spiritual sympathy towards these mothers who really lost their children because of these horrific acts of violence. And really, this track really is one of their most darkest and most mournful tracks ever on an album. And this has a Spanish vibe to it. It has, I think, kind of like, I forget what you call that kind of guitar, but it's a very small guitar that creates this almost this Spanish vibe, but it's also very mournful too. Bono's lyrics here are very chilling. They're very chilling, straight to the bone here. It's like, night hangs like a prisoner. Hold on, let me get the lyric sheet out. Night hangs like a prisoner, stretched over black and blue. Hear their heartbeat. We hear their heartbeat. In the trees, our sons stand naked. Through the walls, our daughters cry. See the tears in the rainfall. Such evocative imagery with these lyrical writing. Like, this is Bono as probably his most strongest lyrical album to date. This song, I could not think of an album to really close on. The lyrics are chilling. It's so evocative. It always gives me goosebumps every time I hear it. And it's very sentimental to me in the sense that the lyrical inspirations really traces back to personally for me, my Hispanic heritage, and really expresses sympathy with that. So The Mothers of the Disappeared is one of the most fantastic closers to an album I've ever heard. This whole album, amazing, fantastic, great, emotionally evocative, and it was really the first album to really push U2 into superstardom worldwide. So I can't recommend this album enough. U2, The Joshua Tree. Leave a comment in the comment section below. Tell me what you think. Do you love this album? What are your favorite tracks on this album? Tell me. Really, really, really tell me. Rate, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you later. Mr. Music Fan, Joshua Tree, U2. Take care.